This is the War Room Roundtable podcast, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant businessmen and women on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on the road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their successes into your life and business. The War Room Roundtable is brought to you by your hosts, Jason Miller, CEO of Strategic Advisor Board, and Phillip Lanos, CEO of Own the Rhythm, and former podcast host for Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine. Thank you for tuning in to the War Room. Lexi Kaz, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. Now, Jason has told me nothing but great things about you. You should know that off the bat. And Jason doesn't just throw words around. I'm sure another thing you know about him. Mm-hmm. So it really is exciting to have you here. And I thought we can kick it off, as we do on this show traditionally, by asking you, Lexi, do you yourself come from a family of entrepreneurs?
I do. Yes. I was raised by my mom, me and my twin sister. And she is a big entrepreneur. She's always encouraged me just to continue to follow my entrepreneurship spirit, because I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. And I might have mentioned it to you, Phillip, or Jason, but I played soccer in college. So that was really my main focus since high school, middle school, since I made that commitment to myself that I wanted to play. But I've also always been, an eBay reseller, hustler on that side of things. But it wasn't until I left school that my mom really encouraged me. I mean, it has always encouraged me, but really encouraged me to be like, hey, you've never had this freedom before, because soccer was the main aspect of your time. Now really, believe in yourself and dive into that. So the answer is yes, definitely come from a family.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few things that Jason and I know have heard on this show, and that is athletics and entrepreneurship really do go hand in hand in a lot of ways because of the qualities that someone has to develop. Do you find that's true in your own journey, being able to carry that over?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to have that drive and commitment to yourself. And I believe the belief is the most important aspect, because you have to believe. I mean, I had to believe in myself first and always, that I could go play at the Division I level, or that I wanted to, because, it's a big commitment, but I recognize taking that belief in my athletics into my business, because there's many obstacles, hurdles, just like injuries in sports, that you just have to continue to push through and walk through those. But the belief is such the biggest parallel that I see.
Okay, now belief and Division I. We need to open that up, because we need to know exactly what Division I is. And you have to forgive my ignorance. I'm not familiar with it. And it's crazy because I'm Latino, so you think soccer would go right in hand with me. But can you explain the difference between Division I and not Division I?
Yeah. So D1, D2, D3. D3 and D1 are the biggest two pools in my knowledge. D2 is kind of, I'm not even that educated on D2, because it's usually, you hear more, at least in my circle, kids go to play D1 or D3. D3 is more academic focused schools, smaller liberal arts schools, I'd say. I'm more familiar of East Coast D3 schools. So it's just more academic focused, and they don't give out, to my knowledge, they don't give out mostly athletic scholarships. They don't do that. So with D1, they do give athletic scholarships, and usually they have football. Some D3 schools do, but D1 mostly have football. They're a lot bigger in that sense with on the athletic side of things, and it's a much bigger commitment. And so that's really what I saw with some of my friends who also went to D1 programs or D3, just how our lives were different in that time of being an athlete.
But put it this way, most of your professional players come out of Division I schools.
Yes. Yes.
pretty
So
much.
you're in good company.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because now we're adding another layer, right? It's not only belief, but also a certain level of education minimum, like a certain level of excellence minimum is what the theme is coming around here. And so it took me a while, but I figured out. So AK Infinite, right? I'm assuming is for your name and then Infinite. So this company, how does this come into the picture? Because here you are pursuing sports, and you've got a clear vision of the championship you're looking to win. And now another trophy falls into your vision. How does that happen?
Yeah, such a good question, because and I've had many conversations with my past coaches in club, and they, one of them said to me, he was like, out of all of the kids, I wouldn't have guessed you to not continue playing for all your 4 years in college. And so what really, I know COVID was a big factor in terms of just how it really affected my mental health playing in a Division I program, very intense, but also we were in Zoom school. So it really was a challenging atmosphere for me. I also had some injuries. So there was just a bunch of factors that really, I wasn't really happy where I was. And I remember I had told myself before committing or before going that I would keep playing soccer until I didn't enjoy it anymore. And I really lost some of the love for it when I was in school. I've had a lot of it's come back. I will always love soccer, and I've played for fun since leaving, and that's really just reignited my love for it. But essentially I left school because I wasn't happy in that environment, or I told myself I would take a year off, a gap year. And so I took a gap year with the intention. I didn't even know what my intention was in terms of returning to soccer, but I wanted to give myself that space and grace to take a break. And it was the hardest decision I'd ever made in my life, because I was on that path and I wanted to be on that path. I wanted to play in college. I wanted to play after college. At least that's what I thought at the time. But essentially that's what happened. And then I dropped out. I took a gap year, but now I'm I'm a college dropout now, if you want to be specific. But I remember a couple months I was really, really struggling with my sense of identity for a bit, because soccer was a large part of that. Such a large part. And I had a couple months of kind of grieving that large part of my identity for a bit. And then I remember looking online, because, I was eBay reseller, Depop reseller, hustler in that sense, but I hadn't really had any experience of building a business or filing an LLC, none of that specifics. Then I found a course online. I was looking online one day, like how, the YouTube algorithm must have really just sent me some good stuff. The universe sent me some good stuff, and I found this course. And that's kind of, that's where it started. The rest is history in terms of how it began, but that's just a little bit of how it started.
Oh, there's some interesting things happening there, because we're talking about I don't know if you remember, Jason, the game within the game, and our fellow guests here who are also, they're former NFL athletes, and they also had this mental health issue in college when pursuing that level of excellence. Oh man, it's insane how often that happens. And yet entrepreneurship somehow is the next plateau to sort of get you further. Before I keep going, I want to turn this over to Jason and make sure I give him a chance to ask questions before I run the entire show.
Yeah. Well, here's something that's really interesting about, what I've learned, because you're in my daughter's generation, my oldest daughter, right? So
yeah,
I've really learned how pliable, right? Like most of, maybe not all, but especially the ones that want to pursue more than just the ordinary, right? How pliable you really are, right? She's run into tons and tons and tons of adversity through COVID. She was a nurse, went through that whole, crap sandwich of COVID as a nurse, all those things, but really loved what she did so much, right? That it wasn't a hurdle. And until later on in that process, when she decided to do home health care on her own, right? Her own business, for lack of better words, and really showed that the strength is or was in all those past short learnings, right? Because I always look at my generation, we learned the hard way for everything, hard-headed, yeah. And it took a long time, right? So it's like whacking you on the head with a freaking baseball bat for months at a time, right? Where I think that's a defining difference between, like my daughter and me, is way more pliable and willing to change much faster than, I know myself well enough. I'm a hard-headed, 46-year-old knucklehead sometimes. And, but I know that about myself. So I can make fairly fast changes. My wife might not agree with that, but that's what I love about the younger generation of business owners. It's like pivot really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Bam, 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 bam. And not even stop and look backwards. It's a great thing. It really is. It's the art of the micro pivot.
Mm.
That's a valid point you just brought up. Mm-hmm. The idea of pivoting, just like Lexi had done with going from sports to immediately finding something to turn all that ambition and energy into, and whatever was bottled up there. Some people in my generation, our generation, actually, Lexi would call that failure and be afraid to change at all and then be stuck there. But it's really just a pivot. Now, was that something that you had to cross a mental hurdle for as well?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's so interesting that you say that, because I feel like I know that I had faced that, especially with coaches or past teammates or just anyone who was questioning, even if that wasn't where they, the words they were saying directly to me. I could feel their energy in terms of like, are you sure? Or when are you going to go back? Or what's your next plan? And all these questions. And it was like, yeah, I was pivoting. And I was going to say that, Jason. I was going to say, pivot, I think. And as you know, is one of the best words, because, and also I played basketball for a little bit. So I love the visual of pivoting on the court. But it was definitely something that was a challenge, especially, being from Los Angeles. I've seen a big spectrum of either the believers and the creatives who they themselves pivot or continue to pivot, or the latter, where it's like, I guess more, you should go to college, you should do this, you should get a job. And I fell on the other side of the spectrum of I'm going to believe in myself. I mean, I was taking a gap year. That was the first step for me. But I always knew that, like what you said, Phillip, when I jump into something head on, I want to give it my 110%. I mean, that's why I named the company AK Infinite, because I believe that I have infinite potential, and everyone does. It's just about tapping into that.
I see. So I love this, because now we're getting into the ethos of what AK Infinite is and how you go about representing the people you work with. So tell me more about what that looks like now that you're here.
Yeah, I mean, what I really, really value, again, I mean, it's funny, I keep connecting it to soccer, but there's so many parallels of teamwork. And I know Jason and I have discussed this as well, but just how having a great team and recognizing and respecting your teammates is just so important. And I've taken that aspect of teamwork and being a teammate into my business with my team members, but also with my clients, because I really do value the long-term relationship. And I value, over time, what can we give to each other, whether it's just a friendship, whether it's continuing to open doors for one another. There's so many ways I see and I just love connecting with people. So that's, I've really taken that same aspect from my athletics into my business of, how can we collaborate and just have the most success together.
Which is now I understand why Jason had great things to say about you. Because if there's anything I know about Jason, it's the more wins we can throw in a single goal, the better it is. And as anyone knows, you make a goal with the whole team, it's not a one-man show. Those people quickly get rooted out on a team. No, I love this. So the agency that you've kicked off, what has that been like for you in terms of like fulfillment now that you made this? Do you find that it challenges you just as much as the athletic world did?
Oh my gosh, yeah, in different ways. I remember a friend of mine had told me she had played in college and had retired from soccer, was on the national team, but she had told me that there's going to be a part where, or a transition period where you're going to be like, what can I do every day to get better at? And because with soccer, I knew that I could do more touches, I could run more, I could lift more. There were tangible aspects that I could do I know that I was getting better at. And at first I was struggling to figure out how can I do that with my business. But now, I'm learning every single day and I absolutely love it because my body isn't getting, worn down at the same time. But yes, I'm challenged every day in the best way. I'm learning, I'm meeting people like you guys, I'm reading, I'm traveling. I feel so lucky and blessed to be, I call myself a digital nomad, just because I'm able to have such a quality of life.
Yeah, no, it is a generational thing for sure. Sort of what Jason was alluding to earlier, our ability and willingness to do all that, because we also were born into it, right? The technology and how that's used and the minimum viable product for a job and what that looks like and what do I absolutely need to be over there instead of the entire brick and mortar and this and that. So I have a lot of respect for the fact that you chose to design a lifestyle business that also creates sick impact, because I know some of the people that you've been working with and they're doing really great things. And so it is cool to see sort of the story behind how all this came to fruition. But if the listener had just a moment of your time and you had something important to say to them about what you do and what you want them to know, what would that be?
Well, I feel like there's context in terms of two things I want to say. One, I had to refund my first customer because our systems went down and I had a decision to make. In that moment, I can not let them know and hopefully it'll come back up in a couple of days, etc. But no, I valued so much my relationship with him that I refunded him. I told him, look, it could come up in an hour, it could come up in a couple weeks, days, but I just want you to know that I value our relationship and I'd rather us figure this out and then go from there. And I wanted to say that for, just giving context, but also my first customer I ever had, I had to refund. And so having that trial and tribulation was very challenging. Just going back to your, question earlier, that was something that could, it was a gut punch, but I could have been like, you know what, I did my best. It worked, but then it didn't. But I kept going. And he's a friend now. So I'm grateful that, it was him. He's an awesome guy, but also I'm proud of myself for making that choice and not just running the other way and just hoping that it would work out. But in terms of, what it is that we do, I'm all about these past couple of weeks, I've really been thinking about what do I want to accomplish really with my business. And I want to be able to tell 1,000+ stories of young entrepreneurs, of business owners, of companies that believe in their product, but just don't have the avenue or the knowledge of how to get it out there. And that's really what I'm about. I want to tell people's stories and continue to encourage entrepreneurs to believe in themselves and what they're doing.
I see. Jason, I know you have a story about refunding a customer or something like that you can. There's got to be one, man. You're the OG here. Talk to us.
Yeah. Well, for starters, the refunding part, right? I always take everything with, always lead with value and do that for as long as it takes, right? I mean, that is the key successful thing to any business is lead with value for however long it takes. And everything tends to fall in place, right? Not always, it's not a magical world of, Walt Disney or something, but typically, right, things tend to fall where they're supposed to, right? And refunds. Oh my God, I got lots of stories about refunds over 20 some years, of course, but I think one that really sticks out. I had this doctor, and he was the number one doctor in the world for this very specific type of heart surgery, right? And he owned a business down in his own private practice down in, I think it was Louisiana, and great guy. And he really wanted to expand his business, do all this stuff, right? But he was very, very niched. And I flew him here into Boulder. This was 6 years ago. I flew him here into Boulder because we were going to do a complete build out of his entire new company, right? But he got here and I realized at that point that I couldn't help him. And I realized that because it's so niched, there's probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 people in a year, maybe if you're lucky, that his hands are ever going to touch that heart, right? So, I felt so terrible about that. I immediately refunded his money. We spent the 3 days together. I paid for his plane ticket. We built his entire business model out and I sent him back. And I ate all the costs myself.
Oh,
and
wow.
Why? Because I just didn't feel that he was going to get his return on investment with that as quickly as I'm accustomed to giving people that return on investment, right? So, but guess what? That all came full circle back about a year later. And he came to me and he said, I created this proprietary way of approaching insurance and all this stuff. And we helped him build that out. And that paid its way back in platinum, right? So there again, it's always lead with massive value for as long as it takes. It will always come back. So that refund resulted in probably a 10x of that initial investment. It's just setting that self-gratification aside set that self-gratification aside. And he came back a year later and said, I need your help to solve this problem. And we did. And it's worldwide now. That particular approach to how they file specific heart surgery stuff. I don't know the technical details of it, but that is what is in the medical system today. So,
oh, wow.
Lead with value. Lead with value for as long as it takes. I can't say it enough times. It'll all come back.
I really appreciate that. And so with all that said, Lexi, if you could go back and talk to yourself when you decided you were going to be taking the gap year before you even did anything with AK Infinite, like in one of those pivotal moments, what would you have said to yourself or to the people that were doubting you at the time, who were trying to fill your head with go the opposite direction, what have you, coaches, teammates, possibly even parents? What would you say to yourself, knowing what you know now about the work that you're doing and what it's been doing for your life?
It's a good question. I think I would tell myself the similar a similar thing in terms of don't listen to what other people have to say in terms of what they think is right, because they're not you, and you know yourself, you believe in yourself. There's such a need for what we're doing. Getting people featured in national media publications, telling their story, building their digital footprint. I mean, that was a year ago. Even more important now, just building that online presence is so important. So I would continue to tell myself, keep believing in what you're doing. And I believe good things take time, and thinking long term versus the short term. I mean, there's definitely short term victories, and always victories each day. But I'd say the biggest thing is to believe in my infinite potential, because I really do believe in that. I believe we all have that, but continuing to trust in that, because if you don't trust and believe in that yourself, nobody can do that for you. So that's the most important thing. I think I would have told myself to keep believing in that.
All right. AK Infinite, turning the potential into potent. I'm with it. I'm with it. All right. So with that said, I believe we've arrived at the hour for the grand finale. Jason, what do you think?
I think so.
All right. So
Drum roll.
I'm not going to beatbox this time.
Is it too early to beatbox?
It's too early. I'm still drinking my coffee.
Yeah,
Lexi, for 1,000,000 points, right? Here's the grand finale question, and that is something that we love asking everyone who stops by, just like the way we start the show. And it is, if you could have invited anybody to this show, dead or alive today, to be here from any point in place and time in the world. And just so you know, people have said things like Jesus Christ to Oprah Winfrey. Okay, so there's no wrong answers. But if you could have invited anybody today, who would you have loved to have had here, and why?
There's this incredible author, speaker. He wrote this book that I just read. It's called The 5 a.m. Club. Robin Sharma. I love that man. I would have loved for him to have been here, and I listen to his podcast every morning. I think he has such incredible things to say. I'm a part of the 5 a.m. Club myself now. I used to think anyone who got up that early was nuts, but I read his book and he changed my life. And so, Robin, if you're out there listening, I would have loved to connect with you.
I get it. Over the past 2 weeks, I have been making a concerted effort to wake up as early as I possibly can, which means I have to force myself to go to sleep earlier, which is something I usually don't do. Mm-hmm. But a friend of mine told me, well, not only that, first of all, I already know Jason does this automatically. He couldn't sleep in if he tried, right? So already I'm like, I got to catch up. But then a buddy of mine named Caesar, he was like, back in the day, if you wanted to eat, you had to get up at the same time the deer and everything else that you were going to hunt. Pardon for the vegans, but you had to get up that early to be able to survive. And it was those people that ate. And things haven't changed much, especially if you're trying to do something on a global level, such as a digital nomad like yourself. You just got to get up earlier. There's just no way around that. Yep. Jason, do you have any thoughts on that?
I always say I get more done by 9 a.m. than most people do all day. Right. So yeah, you're at your best when you wake up, you're charged, you have your cup of coffee or whatever the hell it is you like to drink, right?
Whiskey,
scotch perhaps, whatever it is you like, right?
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, right. But you get that first big punch, right? And that first big punch of energy is always going to be when you get up in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where your biggest sense of accomplishments are. It's like eating lunch and all those things, right? A lot of people skip lunch. Bad idea, right? Because then your day just goes after that, right? Protein bar or something doesn't mean you got to go and freaking have a 9-course meal or something, but something to keep your body going, right? Is really important. But you put the hard work in right up front in the day, and you can kind of let your foot off the gas and relax for the rest of the day a little bit, or at least not have to be on A game all day long, right? That's taxing to be in your A game all day. It's really hard to do it.
High levels of cortisol.
Yeah, releasing all that. Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're gonna make a sort of a protein bar sort of snack for people who do digital conferences all day. We're gonna come in on this together. No, Lexi, it really has been a pleasure getting to know you, learning about your journey. I do owe you a response on something that we've been working towards, and that's something I want to make and hold myself accountable to on this episode, because that's one of the things I love to do. But it really was a pleasure, and I can't wait to learn more, because this is the last time you and I are going to chat. I'll let Jason close us out, though.
Yeah. Hey, great having you here. You know, I always like to say there's 168 hours in a week. You took some time to stop by and drop some value bombs on our audience, which is great. It's a great story. It's a story of adversity. And, you know, typically those of us that, you know, have fought the war. The business is a war, right? It's just, there's no bullets. That's all. But it's a different type of person, and you're cut from that cloth. So just keep going. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you both. I appreciate both of you, and I'm looking forward to keeping the conversation going. So thank you both.
There it
is. You get a hold of that person you wanted on here. We'll do a 4-way war room chat.
Awesome.
Hey, let's look into that. Let's Robin. That's a shout out to
Robin.
you.
There you go.
Yes, please.
I challenge thee to come on the war room.
That would be awesome. Yeah, let's make it happen.
All right. Cheers.
All right, cheers.
Thanks for listening to the War Room Roundtable with your hosts, Jason Miller and Phillip Lanos. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and always remember, if you can dream it and believe it, then you can go achieve it. We'll see you in the next episode.